Okay, hello. Welcome to the Work Better Club. It is me, your friend again. Today I'm sounding more like an RJ than I'm sounding like a trainer or teacher. But in this mahal, in this current environment, which every day, then when you log on to the news, or every day when you log on to a WhatsApp group, you hear some tragedy or the other. We've had quite a few tragedies in our immediate family, thanks to COVID, and every day we hear from our office group some tragedy. So it's a very tough and tragic time for all of us, I'm sure. And the only thing that we can do during times like this is buckle up in a way. And I know I've shared this quote with you in the past, that it's more a prayer. It's called the serenity prayer, which I've shared with you, which says, God grant me the serenity to deal with the things that I cannot change, the courage to deal with the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Right? I love this kind of line. I love this quote. I'll repeat this prayer, which says, God grant me the serenity to deal with the things that I cannot change, the courage to deal with the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between the two. Right? So it's especially very important for all of us to remember during these very tough times, that what is in our control, what is out of our control. The things that are out of our control, there's very little point fretting over them, stressing over them, panicking over them, being anxious over them. And whatever is in your control, try to change that, have the courage to change that to the best of your ability. And yes, of course, one of the things that I think is just very important during a time like this is to engage yourself in productive pursuits. I think that's something which is very important, to engage yourself in productive pursuits, which is, if you're doing some work, ensure that you do that work well. Right? Don't get constantly distracted by what all is happening in the world, or what all is happening around you. Yeah, that's not going to help in any way. Attending a class like this is in a way a great way to be engaged in some kind of a productive pursuit, while there's so much of chaos going outside the world. And I also think, at least that's one of the big lessons that I have had, I think, during COVID. And I know where, the topic that we're discussing here is different, but given the amount of chaos and tragedy that's happening all around us, I thought it was important to kind of start and address that first before we go on to anything else. Because yes, like Ganesh has typed in the chat box, it's been a great learning journey for everyone. Yeah, so it just, I think it's during these times, if you don't engage yourself with productive pursuits, it's so easy to start feeling disheartened, start feeling low, start feeling, like the world is going to the dogs. But it's just so important to pull ourselves back and engage with productive pursuits. I think, as usual, when any incident happens, especially an incident of such huge global scale that has impacted literally every country, literally every person in some way or the other, I think that the biggest lesson to come out of this for me is a reiteration. It's not really a new lesson, but I think it's a reiteration of an important lesson that I've always known, spoken about, taught, and that is that life is very short, and life is very uncertain. Life is very fragile in nature, and given the fact that it's so uncertain, so short, and so fragile in nature, the only thing that we can really do is, in a way, make the most of that very uncertain, very short, very fragile life that we have. Really make the most of it, in the little time that we're in. And always remember that, whether it's COVID or not, life is uncertain. and really, so value every day that you get, be grateful for every day that you get, be grateful for the family that you have, be grateful for every little thing that is there. If you're alive, be grateful for that, and constantly practice that gratitude. I think constantly being aware and practicing that gratitude is so important. And of course, just the other thing before we kick start this session, so much of I hope what we realize is people indulge themselves in so much rubbish, so much nonsense, so many fake, false beliefs, and they spend so much of their time in that space, right? And the really important things in life are very, very few that we need to kind of really focus on, right? And if we really bring our focus to those things, as has happened in a big way during COVID, right? We've kind of let go of so many things and really brought our focus back to the things that really matter, the things that are essential. We've realized that through COVID. And, of course, um, what do I mean by that, right? The things that are really important, if you think of it, is your own health to start with. That's something which is important, both physical and mental health, right? The health of your friends and family, the close ones, that is so important. um, these are the two most important things, if you ask me, your health and that. So even after COVID, is ensure that you're taking all the proactive measures that you need to take care of your health, right? And take all the reactive measures as well, right? What are those reactive measures? It's health insurance is a reactive measure. Possibly having enough money in the bank when something goes wrong beyond your health insurance, right? If that you think can't cover it. But those are like the essential things, right? So your health, your family's health, the quality of your relationships, the nature and relationship that you have with your work or your productive pursuits, how you spend your time, just all these things, just these few things are the most important things in life, which we often get distracted on, right? And of course, a last suggestion to you in this difficult time from me is, since we are at home, I think it's very natural for us to get hooked on to social media, get hooked on to constantly checking the news, and beyond the point, it's not going to serve you any purpose. Just going to make you feel worse. I can tell you that, right? So please ensure that you again control your own addiction, because literally so many of us are behaving like kids, right? Control your own addiction towards being on your phone, being on social media, being on WhatsApp all the time, because that is not serving you very well. And this constant kind of information overdose which is there, again, is not going to serve you very, very well, right? So I just thought, difficult to do a class during this time if you don't address some very important kind of issues, or just throw some light on that, right? Okay, so with that, let's get on to Edward de Bono, the six thinking hats, right? Now, I essentially I start every class with saying more or less the same thing. This is a very interesting concept which I'm going to teach you over the next kind of hour or so. And my suggestion to you would be, read and watch more about this concept even after this class gets over, because this is such an interesting concept. And the other thing is, you could also look at the other kind of writings of Edward de Bono and the other teachings of Edward de Bono, because he's one of the kind of smartest people and on the planet, and especially one of the things that he focuses and talks on is very, very simple. It's how do we start thinking better, right? And if you ask me, that's the single most important thing that a person needs. Children need, adults need, all of us need, right? Our ability to think better. If we have that, in a way, you won life if you have that, right? The ability to think better, because our life is nothing but our thoughts, the generation of our thoughts. So if you can't think well, it's likely that your life is not going to be On the professional side, you're not going to see the kind of success that you want to, and even on the personal side, you'll end up taking so many stupid, wrong, irrational decisions if you can't think right. And Edward de Bono, in a way, is a champion of promoting good thinking, both creative and critical thinking. So I would really encourage you to read more on this gentleman, on this subject at large, right? Now, you know all of these things, so I'm not gonna run you through that again. None of y'all have said that y'all can't hear me yet, so I'm assuming that y'all can hear me, right? Now let's understand this idea about six thinking hats. Essentially, it's is the idea of what we call parallel thinking. So thinking from all sides or all directions is what this thing is about. um, so this is a good example of understanding what parallel thinking is, right? Imagine three people trying to describe a country house, a village or a town or a small house, right? One person stands in front of the house, one in the back, and one on the side. Each argues that theirs is the correct view of the house, trying to prove that they are right. This leads to nowhere. Now imagine if all three walked around the house to look at each side together. Now everyone has the same vantage point, and each person gets to see all three perspectives. This is what parallel thinking is, right? So trying to look at a single issue, not just through in one direction, but from many different sides or directions. That's what parallel thinking is, and that's what kind of six thinking hats encourages you to do, right? Now, this is continued. In parallel thinking, all participants focus in the same direction at any given time. This helps in exploring a subject in depth. It helps break out of our habitual thinking style. For example, some people have a positive, rational point of view, but they might fail to look at a problem from an emotional, negative perspective, which may lead to wrong decisions. The parallel thinking technique, six thinking hats, fosters creativity and innovation by forcing us to adopt different perspectives and thus obtain a more complete view of a situation, right? So that's what parallel thinking is, and six thinking hats is a form of parallel thinking, right? I love this idea of six thinking hats, right? So let's jump straight into it. So what are the six thinking hats? The six thinking hats explore multiple perspectives of a question or problem. The main premise of the six thinking hats process is to have the group individual wear one hat at a time, look at the problem from one perspective. The perspective is indicated by the hat color. The six thinking hats was created by Dr. Edward D. Bono. Okay, I want you to kind of go through these 2 points again for you to understand what the six thinking hats are. The six thinking hats explores multiple perspectives of a question or a problem. The main premise of the six thinking hats process is to have a group or individual wear one hat at a time, look at the problem from one perspective, the perspective indicated by the hat color, right? So that's what you're trying to do, right? Now, um, conceptualization of the six thinking hats. De Bono recognized that the following obstacles to problem solving. The discussions can often become biased and ego driven, where the goal shifts from finding the best solutions to winning the argument, right? You would have seen this happen so often in meetings and discussions where everybody wants to be right about their opinion, and nobody cares about whether that opinion is going to be the best solution for that particular problem, right? And then people start arguing. So this is what all of us have realized in every kind of discussion that happens, right? It becomes biased and ego. People hate saying, because all of us have an ego very naturally, including my 3-year-old son has a ego, right? um, and me and my kind of mother and my wife, and we keep looking at him, and we find it so strange, that how having an ego is so natural to a human being, right? So it's not something which is cultivated through through some teachings. It's just so natural to us, right? So my son is always, even when he's talking, he can barely talk, barely put stuff together, but he always wants to come across as the smart one. He doesn't like admitting that he was wrong about something, right? He always wants to come across. And similarly, that's what happens to people. Most people during discussions are so unwilling to say that, hey, your idea was better than my idea. They're so unwilling to say that I was wrong, you were right about this thing. Or very rarely do you find in meetings somebody actually coming with a certain opinion and then changing their opinion after listening to what other people had to say. You see that very rarely, and when we see it, we tend to respect it a lot, right? It brings me to a thought. There's a very nice quote that says, true listening is allowing somebody else to change your mind, right? What a nice use of words. True listening is allowing somebody else to change your mind. And how rarely do we see this? I give an example often of politicians, when they're having debates on TV. Please don't watch those debates. That's the most useless use of your time, right? To watch those TV debates. Nothing good ever comes out of them. You're not learning anything, and you're wasting a whole amount of time. But if you watch them, you'll realize not once has anybody, including the anchor, said, hey, that's an interesting point of view. I guess I need to look at it, and probably what you're saying is very valid, very interesting. So of course I get that, what they're supposed to do is just try to defend their party, government, whatever it is. But you don't see those productive discussions because of that ego driven thing that comes so naturally to us, right? And this is again where Edward de Bono's six thinking hats really starts helping us, right? Diverse thinking styles can sometimes hamper the creative process, where the different thinking styles block each other, right? So that's something which can hamper happen. Individuals can get confined to their habitual thinking styles, failing to look at different perspectives. All of us know this. What this essentially means is, just to give you an example, right? Before we get into it, is that there are a lot of people that who we call optimistic, right? Or we call them positive people, and they tend to look at every kind of situation from a over optimistic point of view. Now, that doesn't always help, right? To look at every situation from a positive point of view, because some situations, if you just look at the positive side of something, you are and don't look at the downside of it, or don't look at the negative, or don't look at the risk that can come and hamper you at a later point. On the other side, we know so many people that are habitually, they can only see the negative side of stuff, right? They can only see the risks, they can only see the problems, they can only see how things can go wrong, and they don't have the ability to look at the opportunities, the positive side, what could happen. They don't do that, right? And what you'll find out as we go along, what this kind of model helps you to do is, it helps you to look at everything from all directions, right, and all sides, so that even if you have a natural tendency of being positive about something, you'll start thinking about the negative. If you have a natural tendency of looking at things from a negative point of view, it'll help you see it from a positive point of view, right? So that's what this kind of model is supposed to do, right? To you, right? And that's what makes it amazing. To counter these challenges, he came up with the six thinking hats technique. Right now, what are the benefits of the six thinking hats? Number one, maximizes the productive collaboration and minimizes the counterproductive interactions and behaviors, which means no single view or person can dominate a meeting or a group discussion, right? So this is what it does. It helps in the collaboration and minimizes the counterproductive interactions. Number two, it helps a discussion become extremely structured, therefore no perspectives get missed out. issues, problems, and decisions are evaluated thoroughly and systematically. And of course, like I said, it helps you see all the sides of the problem, stimulates creative thinking, which means teams generate more, better ideas, solutions, encourages going beyond the obvious to discover effective alternative solution, and of course helps view problems from new and unusual angles, can be used by groups or individuals, right? So can be used by both. So these are some of the benefits of the six creative of the six thinking hats. And I can tell you for sure, sometimes while we are having discussions around important issues, the fact that we know the six thinking hats, sometimes we're not actually thinking in terms of hats, but we more or less cover all the hats when we're having these discussions. So it's had a huge kind of benefit in our personal and professional lives, right? Okay, so the six thinking hats. So let's look at what it means. Let's look at what the blue hat means. Okay, now the blue hat is the managerial blue hat, right? Um, Okay, so again, I don't know whether everybody's clear, but I'm just going to kind of help you all out here again and try to explain it in the simplest way. Okay, let me look at here. Okay, let me see here. Right. So essentially, what are we talking about? Right. So you say you have a certain problem, right, that you have, or you have a certain situation that needs to be discussed, and so we're looking at it from, in a way, six angles, right? One, two, three, four, five, six angles, right? And each one of these angles, or each one of these sides through which we will look at this problem, is called a hat of different color, right? So you'll have a blue hat, red hat, and each one of this is looking at that problem from a different perspective. That's all that these six thinking hats really means, right? The reason why they're called six thinking hats is, you know, the term, right, which is often used saying, oh, I'm wear your thinking hat, is a term that is used in English to say, start thinking deeply about this issue, right? That's where the term thinking hat comes from, right? It's used very, very often. So for example, if I have to ask my son to think about something, I'll be like, wear your thinking hat and think about this issue. So it's a very well and widely used term for do think about this deeply, right? That's what it means. So he took that term six thinking hats, and made it, okay, think deeply about it, but don't just think deeply. While thinking deeply, think about it from six different angles, right? And each one of those angles, each one of those hats, we'll give it a different color so people really understand it, right? So that's what it is essentially. Now, for a lot of companies that really use this thing seriously, sometimes even in their meetings, they actually get physical hats, right, just to make the point, where at least one person in the meeting wears a blue hat when they're doing blue hat thinking, then a red hat when they're doing red hat thinking, right? So this really drives the point home that currently all of us are thinking and looking at this problem from this perspective, right? That's what it does basically. But I hope all of you all are clear on what these six thinking hats essentially mean. If you are clear, give me a big yes in the chat box. If you're not clear, ask me a question right now, because otherwise it's going to be confusing for you later on. Okay, where are the rest? Where are the rest? Yes. Okay. So now, what is the blue hat, right? The blue hat means, it's called the managerial blue hat. And what does it do? The blue hat controls and oversees the thinking process and uses insights from other hats to decide on a suitable plan of action, right? So um, the blue hat's role is to form, right? That's it. short form which is given. What does form means? It's to focus, which means specify the discussion, right? That's what you need to do to make it specific. Outline the discussion, that's what it does. The results, which means summarize and draw conclusions, okay, and monitor and control the discussion, right? So that's what the blue hat thinking is supposed to do, right? The blue hat controls and oversees the thinking process, uses insights from other hats to decide. So this is what it's called, the managerial hat in a way, right? And the managerial blue hat, the blue hat asks questions like, what problem are we facing, right? So it tries to define the problem very well. It says, what is the desired outcome that you're looking for from this particular thing, right? So it in a way looks at setting the objective well, and what is the most effective way of proceeding, right? So one of the key roles of the blue hat is to define the problem, and in a way set the objective of what we're trying to achieve. After defining the problem, the blue hat manages the flow, adoption, implementation of ideas by outlining the agenda, rules, and goals of brainstorming, collating all the ideas, opinions, and informations presented by the other hats, managing time, and structuring an action plan for solving the problem, right? So the only way to look at what is the blue hat supposed to do when you're wearing the blue hat, and more often than not, a lot of meetings kind of start by the with the blue hat, and sometimes they even end with blue hat thinking, right? Because at the start of the meeting you want to say, you want to literally define what the problem is by saying what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve, what is the desired outcome that we have, right? So what this means is that at any given point of time, a company could have a certain problem that needs to be solved, and for that problem they need to define what the problem is. So then they can start looking at the kind of, I'm going to try to draw a hat, right? So then they can start looking at that problem through all the different hats that is there, right? But if the problem itself is not defined properly, then that becomes a problem, right? What this means is the desired outcome. Sometimes the desired outcome could be that, how is it that we as a company can move from 5 million revenue to 7.5 million revenue, right? So that is something that could be the way the desired outcome is defined, that you need, and then you can look at that entire problem from different angles, right? So that's what this essentially means, of what we need to do. And besides just defining the identifying the problem and defining the outcome, also the other things that in a way the leader or manager kind of role needs to be there. That's why it's called the managerial blue hat, which is outlining the agenda, rules, goals of brainstorming, and doing all these other things is the job of the blue hat, right? Now let's look at what the job of the white hat is, right? By the way, the white hat junior also comes from this white hat, right? White hat is the information hat. Its objective is to explore the facts of the problem in an unbiased and neutral way. The white hat focuses on seeking out hard, verified, factual information related to the project or question, and not generating ideas, right? The best time to put on the white hat is at the beginning of the brainstorming session that you're going to have, right? Around this thing. So again, each and every one of these slides is very important to go through carefully, right? White hat is the information hat. Its objective is to explore the facts of the problem in an unbiased and a neutral way. The white hat focuses on seeking out hard, verified, factual information related to the project or question, and not generating ideas. The best time to put the white hat forward in the brainstorming is right at the start, right? I hope you get it. So when it comes to that issue that you have, the first thing that you want to say is, what are all the facts of the matter, facts, figures, concrete information that I have with me right now? Let's put all those things on the table right at the start, right? And that's what you want to do. And everybody starts thinking in that group, however big or small, or as an individual, you think about all those things first as to what the facts that you have in hand, right? And this is really a good way to do it. Okay. And I hope you understand how the white hat is basically, the hats are basically giving you a structure, right? The blue hat is the managerial hat, right? And that managerial hat really helps you put the agenda, the timeline, ensure that you're summarizing stuff, ensure that all those things are happening through the blue hat. The white hat is saying, just look at all the information, the concrete data, all the facts that you have connected to it, right? Don't look at anything else first put that on the table, right? The white hat attempts to gather as much information as it can, think of all information you need to make an informed decision, ask questions such as, what information do we have, what information do we need, what information is missing, right? So you may have all the things that are connected to it, but there also could be missing information, right? What information is missing, what questions do we need to ask, how are we going to get the missing information which is there, and so everything connected to facts, information, concrete data is what you look at the white hat, right? So what information do we have, what information do we need, what information is missing, what questions do we need to ask, what how do we get the missing information? So that's the focus of the white hat, right? So the market research surveys question is, just by the way, for even guys, a decision like, should I buy a new apartment or a new house, right? If that is a question that you have, a problem that you have, you can use the white hat, you can use the six thinking hats method to kind of deal with that problem, right? Because say for example, if you need to buy an apartment, it's simple, you need to understand all the facts connected to that particular issue, right, of buying an apartment, and all your attention needs to go to that to start with, right? What could that information be? It could be information from, how much money do you have in all? It could be information of how much money can you spare for, say, the down payment. Do you have a good enough record with your CIBIL score so that you can get the loan? It could be all the things connected to the loans. It could be all the things connected to the apartments that are there, from not just one apartment but just multiple apartments, all the information, all the facts that you would need. So your entire focus as a person, if your question is whether I should buy an apartment or not, this would be the white hat, where you gather all the information connected to it, from your own finances to how much the apartment costs, to what are the all the apartments in the area that you're looking at buying an apartment, right? So that's what essentially you do, to understanding all the information connected to the bank loan, the rates of interest. Each one of those things will have to be covered systematically by you when you're putting your white hat on to solve the problem of whether you should buy an apartment or not, right? Now, what does the red hat thinking means, right? The red hat is the intuitive red hat, right? Using the red hat gives you an opportunity to express feelings, emotions, and intuitions without any need to explain, rationalize, or justify them. The red hat gives intuition and feelings legitimacy and allows us to express them a proper part of the thinking process, right? The purpose of the red hat is to express feelings as they exist, not to force a judgment on this thing, right? It's a very beautiful way of explaining this red hat. Right, now, what are we doing in the red hat? So I'm going to go back, right? So the blue hat, what have you done? The blue hat is like that, the manager figure, right? That's the manager figure in your own head or during a discussion, right? Everybody is wearing that hat. like I said, defining the problem, defining the outcome, knowing more or less, what the timelines is. Are we following it? Summarizing the discussions where important. So that's what the blue hat's role is. The white hat's role is only information, data, facts connected to that issue that you're talking about. Now, what the red hat is doing is, okay, now you collected all the information, you collected all the data, you connected all those things, right? But how do you actually intuitively feel about this thing, right? Which means you're saying that, yeah, do I actually think I should buy a house or not? Right? And you could say, yeah, man, I really feel I should buy a house, right? Or you could say, nee, yaar, I don't think that I should buy a house right now, right? And then you could kind of try to process why you're thinking that, right? Why is it that you're getting that intuitive feeling, or why are you feeling that emotion? And maybe the reason why you're feeling that emotion is because it could be multiple reasons. You may not sometimes even know the reason why you're feeling a certain thing, but it could just be an intuition that you have. Sometimes you'll know the reason, right? You'll be like, man, I don't think I should buy a house, because if I buy a house, that EMI is so large that I fear that it will put pressure on a lot of other expenses that I need to make, like meeting, and it'll really compromise my lifestyle. And that's why, my feeling, although my feeling is that I shouldn't buy it, right? Or somebody else could be, my feeling is to buy it. And possibly the reason behind it is, man, I make so many different expenses which I don't need. The minute I know that I have a proper EMI that I need to give, at least I will put that money to some good productive use, right? Which is, and I'll get the comfort of living in this, right? So मेरा दिल कह रहा है कि I should buy it or not buy it. And you could have reasons for both, and sometimes you may not even have reasons, right, for both. It could just be a feeling that you have. But what the red hat essentially does is, if you're doing this as an individual or as a group, it gives you in a way the legitimacy, right, of expressing how you feel about a certain issue without getting uh, too fearful, of without being embarrassed about a certain thing, right? So, let's look at a certain company that needs to do an acquisition of another company, right? And they could collect all the information, but the people in the room could discuss, saying, what, I don't, the feeling that I get when I talk to these prospective founders that are there, right? It's not a very good feeling. And that's why my heart in a way says that we shouldn't do this particular acquisition. Or somebody that could say, the numbers are not that good, but when I talk to these guys, I get a really positive feeling that we can work well together and do that, right? So again, you need a space which legitimizes your feelings, intuitions, and emotions, which certain times doesn't happen if you just look at the facts, right? Red hat thinkers don't spend too long or to think or analyze the situation, and go with their instinct instead, right? So you're putting your emotion on the table. Red hat thinkers ask questions like, what's my hunch about this? How does this make me feel? How does this make other people feel, right? So it's all about feeling, emotions, intuitions, all of those things, right? Now, okay, so you're done with the blue hat, you're done with the white hat, you're done with the red hat. Now, what is the yellow hat supposed to do for you, right? When you're doing yellow hat thinking, the yellow hat thinking is the optimistic yellow hat. That's the way you can remember it, right? These would be very, very nice things to write down. So even if you want to summarize what you learned, right? So you can write down the managerial blue hat, right? So that'll give you a cue to remember all the things that you learned under it, right? The managerial blue hat, the information white hat, the intuitive red hat, and the optimistic yellow hat, right? One word is enough for you to start remembering it. The yellow hat thinks positively about potential outcomes, seeks merits of an idea, and reaches an optimistic assessment of how it can work. The yellow hat tries to find benefits in an idea, just as the black hat, which we're going to talk about later, tries to find risks and dangers. No idea is too far fetched to merit positive consideration, which encourages more creative thinking and concepts, right? Now, the entire thing that you're supposed to do when you're wearing the yellow hat in a way is to think about the positive potential outcomes about that thing that you're talking about, right? All the positives is what you need to look at while doing it. All the benefits, all the positives, all the gains that you could have from it. And the minute you start thinking, that also helps you become more creative in your thinking, right? Because you're now totally concentrated on looking at the positive kind of side in the yellow hat, right? So the yellow hat thinking focuses on the likelihood of the solution working. So if you have a certain hypothesis of a solution, right? So you're thinking, why is that a good solution, right? Why will that kind of solution work? So that's what you're thinking, and reasons and logical support to why the solution will work. That's what you're trying to do. And of course, the questions that you can ask yourself is, how can we make this work, right? What positive outcomes could result, right? What results could you get, and what are the long term benefits of what it is that you're talking about, right? So the yellow hat essentially is looking at this entire issue from, what are the positives that will come out of it, what are the benefits that will come out of it, what are the gains that will come out of it, how will doing this really help us, how will this make it work, right? So that's the entire focus of what you're trying to do through the yellow hat, right? Now look at how interesting it is. I'm going into recap because it just six different angles to look at any problem or any issue or any objective that you're trying to meet. And that's the beauty of this thing, right? You're looking at it from all angles. You're starting in a way with the managerial hat, which is the blue hat. Then you're going to the information white hat. Then you're going to the red hat, your intuitive or your feeling red hat. Then from there you're looking at it from the optimistic white hat point of view, right? So this is how you've now covered different angles of that same problem. Right, now let's look at the black hat. We got a jhalak of it in the last one, right? The black hat is the pessimistic black hat, right? So black hat thinkers look at potentially negative outcomes of a decision. They're cautious and look for reasons why something might not work, right? So that's what they do. um, this is so interesting, right? So again, I repeat, black hat thinkers look at the potentially negative outcomes of a decision. They're cautious and look for reasons why something might not work. Wearing the black hat is an opportunity to be critical or skeptical without inhibition. It helps guard against excessive optimism and avoid mistakes, right? That can be made. So that's what it's supposed to do. So here it would allow somebody to look for all the problems, all the faults, all the potential negative outcomes when it comes to that problem, when it comes to that decision, when it comes to that objective that you're trying to meet, right? And just imagine a group. Imagine a group where, say, if three people or four people or five people are dealing with the problem. um, it'll be so nice if at one point of time everyone is looking at it from a positive point of view, which is a yellow hat point of view. Then everyone is putting on the table what are the potential dangers, problems, negative outcomes of that particular situation, right? Everybody is looking at it from that point of view, right? And really, in a way, forcing their thinking to think about what the potential. So even in a way, the most diehard optimist, when he's wearing a red hat, he if he's good with his thinking, when he's wearing when he's wearing the black hat, he's going to think, nee yaar, I need to come up with something which is a potential problem with this thing, right? Because you need to you need to look at the positive, you need to weigh, look at the negative, then weigh both options and then decide what course of action to take, right? The black hat also highlights the weak points in a plan and allows you to eliminate them, or prepare contingency plans to counter them, right? So that's what the pessimistic black hat is supposed to do. When donning the black hat, ask yourself, will this really work? Right? What are all the possible ways this could fail? Is it profitable to do? How can we justify this financially? Will our clients like this? What won't they like about this? some spelling mistakes there. Does it fit our values and ethics? Is it legal? What don't I like about this? Right. So you're looking at it from every possible danger, risk, negative side, right? And a good way to cover all your bases is by looking at everyone and everything. The solution will impact once you identify the stakes, evaluate the risks for each one of them, right? So once you identify what are those kind of, the negative, the risks, the reasons why you should be cautious, the reasons why you might fail, all of those things, then you can actually see how big or small, right, each one of those risks are once you identify them. So that's what, again, the six thinking hats really helps you brainstorm properly and generate all the ideas you need to, and then you can go into a further kind of evaluation of it, right? Okay, so let's go again. Start with your blue hat, which is a managerial hat that defines the problem, thinks of the objective that needs to be solved, sets the agenda, summarizes from time to time the discussions that are happening on the table to put it together. We discuss that form bit, right? So you're starting with that blue hat, the managerial hat. The next thing that you're going to look at is the information white hat, is going to look at all the information connected, all the facts, data connected to that particular issue. You're going to try to put on the table. You're also going to identify what is missing as far as the data, facts, information that you need. Whatever is missing, how are you going to go and get it? So you're going to try to get as much of that information and data as far as possible towards the start of it, right? Once you're done with that, then you're going to wear the red hat, which is the intuitive red hat, which is all about your feelings towards that issue. You don't need to be embarrassed to really talk about your gut, your intuition, the way you feel about that certain thing. In a way, all your facts could be supporting a case for something, but your gut intuition could be telling you something else about that issue, right? It's not that you go by the facts itself, or you don't go by your gut itself. A lot of people think, oh, my intuition always tells me the right thing. That's rubbish, right? Your intuition is tells you a lot of nonsense, a lot of rubbish things, because if you're a fearful person, your intuition will always guide you in to be fearful about stuff. That doesn't mean that fear will take you to the right direction, right? So this whole thing, oh, my intuition is amazing and gives me all the answers, is often not right. But intuition is very, very powerful. It's something that you need to consider, need to put into action in terms of how do you actually feel about it, right? So start with the blue hat, go to the white hat, then go to the intuitive red hat, right? After you're done thinking from that angle, then you're going to think from the optimistic yellow hat, right? That's what you're going to use, right? Where you're going to look at all the positive, all the benefits, all the ways in which that thing is going to help you, right? So you're going to try to look and force yourself to look at every positive outcome. Then you're going to wear your black hat, which is the pessimistic black hat, where you're going to look at all the problems. You're going to look at all the possible risks, all the dangers, all the negative outcomes, all the reasons why something could go wrong connected to that particular issue, right? The more the merrier. And then you list them down and really evaluate the risk factor of each one of them, right? But all the people in that room are thinking in that direction. And then finally you come to the green hat, right? So what is the green hat? The creative green hat. That's what it is. The green hat explores alternatives, new ideas, and creative solutions to a problem. By wearing the green hat, we make a deliberate effort to look for new ways of doing things. There is a low output pressure with the green hat. All ideas are welcome, no matter how impractical, stupid, or provocative they are. They can serve as a stepping stone to very practical solutions, right? So the green hat is interesting. All of these are interesting, right? So once you looked at it from all the first five angles, you then say, okay, now let's start thinking in a way wild, right? Let's start thinking of an absolutely new way of looking at this entire problem, right? And there is a low output pressure, right? Which means that all ideas are welcome, no matter how impractical, stupid, or provocative they are, right? Because you're saying that, okay, that, okay, that stupid, seemingly stupid idea can have something good in it that can give possibly a practical solution to it, right? So you're not going to discourage any ideas of any sort at this stage when you're wearing the green hat, in a way, right? So green hat thinkers ask questions like, can we do this in a different way? How can I think outside the box about this issue? If I had endless resources, what would I do? When wearing the green hat, generate as many ideas, alternatives, or solutions as you can, without critically analyzing the feasibility of the solution. Use mind mapping to generate the and note down your ideas, right? So you must check out what mind mapping means. But here you're basically going wild, right? You're thinking about totally different ways of looking at that same problem. And that's when you're wearing the kind of creative green hat about these things, and wonderful things sometimes will come out of it, right? So this, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially a brief study on what the six thinking hats are. Yes, so first, whatever your takeaways are from this session that we've had, it's been a crisp session, but whatever your takeaways are, please put them down in the chat box. And then, of course, I hope that you'll have questions that you'll have connected to this, right, in terms of its usage and stuff like that, which I will be glad to answer. But first, let's put down the your key takeaways. Come on, everybody, put your takeaways, the things that you, especially, of course, your big takeaways, what the six thinking hats are and how you're going to use it. But what just are your thoughts that you're taking away from this session? So that's what your takeaways are. Of course, the big takeaway is the six thinking hats and trying to think from all six directions. But what were the other kind of insights that you had, other learnings that you had from this thing? Come on, come on, come on. Okay, Rahul, nice. I'm happy. We should try this six thinking hats for our issues and problems so that we can take better decisions. Yes, very, very nice. So we can take better decisions. Normally, unknowingly, we just think only in a few ways for a problem. Amazing insight. Yes. Rahul, as usual, right? I keep saying that any of the topics that we talk about, and especially the six thinking hats, try to watch a few more videos on it, right? This class really covers a whole lot. It's such an amazing, simple concept, right? It's such an amazing, simple concept, and a lot of what we've discussed is very good for you to get an understanding of it. But I would still suggest that you watch a few videos on it, read a little more on it, get this information in text in some way, right? So that you can keep it in front of you. And that's something that'll really kind of help you know more about it and really start thinking in this manner and in this direction. So yeah, I'm glad that you like it, right? Ganesh, wear one hat at a time, build creativity and innovation by wearing different hats at different times, maximize the productivity and structured thinking. Yeah, it's beautiful. This thing, and like I said, very often since I learned about this at least kind of 10, 12 years back about this concept, and we tend to look at things from each one of these hats when we're taking directions. Often when we're having meetings, we don't say, oh, now we're wearing this hat, right? We don't end up saying that, which we should, as a matter of fact, do a lot more. I realize that in meetings, but all of us, when we're looking at stuff, we wear the blue hat first. When we're saying, okay, what's the problem, have we defined the problem properly? We often go to, okay, what is all the information that we have? Then we often go to saying, okay, but what is our feel about it? Then we go to what are the positives, we go to the negatives, and then what are the wild ways, creative ways in which we can deal with it, right? So we tend to cover that, and it's of huge benefit, right? um, where one had it, okay, got a brief idea about six thinking hats, application level, and more reading has to be done. Definitely all hats to be board which deciding on something important. Savita, definitely you're right. If you ask me, right, just to get started, Savita, even if you just keep those terms that I kept repeating through the class for you to get reminded of them: the managerial blue hat, the information white hat, the intuitive red hat, the optimistic yellow hat, the pessimistic black hat, the creative. Even if you keep these in mind, right, and if you put them somewhere, you will get reminded of all the things that you need to do in these different hats that are there, right? And that's what I love about this model. It's so simple, and yet it's so insightful and so useful and so easy to apply, just by keeping those six hats and those one word against each one of them. Just that is such a nice thing to do. Right, so yes, Bindu, I think I like what you've written. Every hat means a different perspective to go for solving problems. All hats will help, right? Absolutely. And also the way there's a huge kind of relation between yellow being the optimistic, black being the negative, green being the, so there is relevance to those colors as well, by the way, right? So it's very, very nicely thought of by Edward D. Bono, and like I would encourage you all to also look into more of his work and what he do. So I'm glad you all have liked what you all have taken, and there are some great takebacks, right? Okay, Divya, can you please share the assessment to for people? Okay, there you go. Your assessment for today. Okay, I hope you answered your assessment. Let me launch the feedback for this crisp session. There you go, launching the poll for my friends. Please give us your feedback, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, thank you very much for your great feedback as usual. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Yes, you know this already. The self paced masterclass, email insights, email in this. Tomorrow, you have the Sunday Motivation series continues. How to be an effective coach is on 15th May. And then you have the Live Better series, which is something new that we're offering to our Work Better Club members. Something very very interesting is coming up. Bindu, thank you very much for your kind words. You guys are too kind to me, always making my day. But yes, you should. The 16th May, when we do I want to probably do on 15th May as well, right? A Live Better series, which is just we're going to be taking interesting topics, which will help us live our personal lives in a much better fashion. We're going to take up those topics and we're going to have very interesting discussions on them, and each one of these classes are going to be taken up by me, and me and our content person Arunima are going to have interesting discussions on them, and she's going to be posing a lot of questions around that topic which is there. And yeah, all of you all are going to be free to post your questions as the class is going on. And yeah, we thought we would just mix up things a little because most of the topics that we have by now have been covered, so this is something which is interesting and good. So I'm looking forward to actually 16th May and doing that, right? You know where to follow us. Yes, questions, right? I'm awaiting your questions on this topic. And all your questions, put it in the Q&A box. Ganesh, thank you. I'm glad you learned a lot. I love this subject myself. It's a very interesting subject. Like I said, it had a deep impact on my life. Such a simple idea, but I retained it for a very long time. So I'm very very happy that you found it useful too. Thank you, Ganesh Kumar. Thank you, both the Ganeshes. Okay, I'll wait for a couple of minutes more. Raju needs the assessment link, please. Divya, so if you can share the assessment link again for Raju, that will be great. Yes, questions. If we don't get questions in a couple of minutes, we will end the session. Yes, okay, thank God we have a question. Sometimes found people thinking more like wearing black hats. Does it mean they are negative in approach? Ganesh, it's a good question, but I think the entire idea of using the six thinking hats while thinking is to look at a problem from all angles or from all perspectives, right? That is what it's supposed to do. But like I mentioned at the start of this session, some people, um, like I love giving the example of my mother. My mother is somebody that's, she's very fearful and very scared of stuff. Her mother is like that too, right? So it seems to be a very natural thing for them to be fearful about everything, right? And totally unwilling to take any kind of, not even risk. They're just scared about just about anything. That's their very natural way of thinking, right? Exactly like that. A lot of people are over optimistic, very very positive about everything. They're not really looking at the negative side. And a lot of people, like you said, they could have a negative. They're always looking at the risks, they're always looking at the dangers, they're always looking of what's going wrong, right? And I don't think that in a way either of these ways of looking at stuff is the right way of looking at stuff. What you want to do is do like holistic thinking around a certain thing, right? Where you're looking really at that issue, problem, goal that you have from each and every angle. You're looking at it from, you're getting the right information. You're looking at how you feel about it. You're looking at the positive side. You're looking at the negative side. You're looking at the creative, ways out of it. So you're really truly looking at it holistically in a way, and that's exactly what it's supposed to do. But sure, to your point, do certain people have a natural tendency to probably think negatively, a natural or probably learned or nurtured way to always think negatively, whatever it is? Yes, definitely. And that's what the six thinking hats is trying to get you out of that mold, right? The other thing, Ganesh, especially six thinking hats is used in meetings, right? When multiple people are discussing problems, it becomes very very nice, because one person could have just positive things and the other person could have negative things. But when the entire group is wearing a certain hat at that point of time, what they're supposed to do is all of them are supposed to think about, say, when they're wearing the yellow hat, all of them are supposed to think about the positives and benefits. When they're wearing the black hat, all of them are supposed to think of the negative, right? So in a way, everybody tends to get more in line with what way of thinking, and that's far more beneficial. Otherwise, in that group, the guy who's the optimist is always thinking about the optimistic, and he's putting that point forward, and the negative guy is putting the negative, and then both of them think that they're at war with each other. Versus when you're wearing each and every hat, what's happening is everybody's looking at the positive, then everybody's looking at the negative, and that can really kind of help in the way you do any when you're thinking as an individual, and also thinking as a part of a group when you're brainstorming that, right? So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. That's nice to know. Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we come to an end with the session. Enjoy your session tomorrow, and I will definitely see you next week. Thank you. Bye bye. See you soon.